Well, hello and welcome to Dread Central. Congrats on your new film.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Uh,
Thanks for talking to me.
for people that maybe don't already know, like my mom, how would you describe the Black Phone?
Let's see. The Black Phone is a scary story set in the 1970s about a young boy who is kidnapped by a serial killer and imprisoned in this madman's basement. And in the basement with our young hero is an antique phone long since disconnected. But then the phone begins to ring at night with calls from this serial killer's other victims. And these dead children don't want our hero Finney to wind up like them. And so they begin to offer him advice. And it is a frightening story that covers some disturbing material. But I would say that I think that the agenda of the movie is about giving a voice and agency back to people who have had it taken away from them. It's funny, I'm leaping away from the question. The film features an iconic mask that was sculpted by Tom Savini and another FX artist, and I'm blanking on his name, but I hope you'll get his name and include that because he should be credited too. It's a brilliant mask, really iconic and frightening. This demon's mask that the serial killer wears, and that apparently came from part of his magic act because this guy is a part-time magician. But Tom Savini said he had one rule for himself, which is he would never work on a movie where a horror movie where he felt that kids were being exploited as victims. And when he read The Black Phone, the script for The Black Phone, scripted by C. Robert Cargill and Scott Derrickson, he said, I've got to do this film because it's actually sort of the opposite of a story about children being exploited as victims. It's about children discovering strength and power and companionship and using that to beat back the darkness. That's what The Black Phone is about.
Couldn't agree more. I find that your style and the style of Scott Derrickson meshes really well, and I'm wondering, why do you think that might be?
I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about Scott did a brilliant job directing The Black Phone. I'm so blown away. I love the film so much, and I can't wait for people to see it. And I have asked myself, but why? Why did Scott so get it? Why was he able to execute on this material so well? I think part of that is about being a good craftsman, but even that doesn't quite explain it. I think that we live in an era where everyone tries to take the home run swing on every scene in every picture, and that Scott has restraint. He trusts his actors. He trusts the moment. He's really interested in emotional accuracy, sort of a pinpoint emotional accuracy about children's lives and the things they experience and how they see the world. About the historical moment. The film is set in the late 1970s in the Midwest. And I think he wanted to capture that historical moment honestly, unpretentiously, without putting it in these sort of bright bubblegum colors, and taking us all for a nostalgia trip.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to get it right. So I think his sense of restraint and his sort of his confidence, he knows what each scene is supposed to do, and his confidence in the material is sort of his secret weapon. It's one of the reasons why he is just, he's been on kind of a legendary run right now.
Mm-hmm.
He did Doctor Strange, he did Sinister, he did The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Yeah.
He's really found his groove.
Yeah, definitely. Out of all the stories on 20th Century Ghosts, is there an other that you think Scott or Blumhouse would be especially well suited to adapt?
I don't know, the first story that comes to mind isn't in 20th Century Ghosts. I think that Scott and Cargo have a terrific sensibility around, young adult protagonists, and they know how to create a menacing sort of iconic villain. In my mind, they'd be a perfect match for Snapshot, which was a novella in my second collection. I did a book of 4 novellas called Strange Weather. And Snapshot is about a kid. He's 13, 14, and he runs afoul of a man named the Phoenician, who has a Polaroid camera that can steal memories. And that seems like the kind of thing that's right in their sweet spot. They probably do a pretty good job with Best New Horror. That was the opening story of 20th Century Ghosts.
So you've touched on the supernatural and ghosts a number of times. I'm wondering, what's your relationship with the supernatural? Do you believe?
The poster in Fox Mulder's office. I want to believe. I have a T-shirt I wear. It says it's the Loch Ness Adventure Club, and something like disregarding. Beneath it, their motto is something like disregarding facts, celebrating possibility, something like that. Yes, I can say I believe in ghosts fully. Where we get into trouble is when we begin to define what is a ghost. Because my definition of a ghost and your definition of a ghost might not be the same. I do believe in ghosts as a psychological phenomenon. I do believe that history has a way of bleeding through into the present. The Faulkner quote, which I think we almost touched on the back of 20th Century Ghosts, is the past is the past isn't over, it's not even past. Isn't that what I think the Faulkner quote goes? And so, but do I believe in? I don't think there's ever been a photo of a ghost. I don't think they could be photographed.
But I know, no.
Because the only places that ghosts can haunt are inside our own mind. Ghosts can only haunt minds, not houses. Yeah, I don't know. Whenever someone asks me about stuff like this, like, do I believe in the supernatural? Do I believe in ghosts? I always fall back on the lamest sort of answers, which is, yes, I do believe them as metaphors.
Hey, it counts.
And metaphors are important and powerful. Do I believe in them actually? I wish I had seen one. I've been looking for them. I've stayed. Whenever I go to a town that has a haunted hotel room, that's the room I always want. If there's a hotel with a haunted hotel room, that's the one I always want.
Yeah.
I've stayed in a bunch. I've never seen a ghost in any of them.
You've never experienced something that you can't explain?
So about in 2010, Fox was filming a pilot based on the comic book I created with Gabriel Rodriguez, Lock and Cave. The pilot was being filmed in Pittsburgh, and it never got on TV. It's pretty cool, but it never got on TV. I decided to drive back. I visited the set for a few days, and then I decided to drive back to Massachusetts, Boston, where I lived at the time. And I drove all day, and at the end of the day, I was still in Pennsylvania. And I'm like, wow, this state is big. Somehow in my mind, I thought I was going to drive from Pittsburgh to Boston. I've been driving all day and I'm still in Pennsylvania. So I started looking for a hotel room, and I found a beautiful old hotel in Bethlehem, outside of Philadelphia. And they advertised a room with a boo, a famously haunted room. Okay. And I was like, I remember calling up my parents and I'm like, I'm booking the room with a boo. And I was like, what do you think happens if in the morning they open the door and I'm dead and my hair has turned white? I've died of fright. Do you think they'll still run my credit card like I got my money's worth? So I went, I booked a room, and it turned out they didn't have a room with a boo, but they gave me the room under the room with a boo. And they said, that one's haunted too, which sounds lame, but I'm like, okay. So I stayed. It's a beautiful hotel. It's a beautiful room. When you looked out the window, it was like looking into the past. It was like looking into the 19th century, brick roads and gaslight lamps. And I went to bed, and then I woke up at 2 a.m. paralyzed with fear, like someone was stepping on my chest. And there was a girl standing at the foot of the bed. And I couldn't lift my head to look at her, but I knew she was there. And I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Go away." And then, and when I screamed that, I heard the people in the room above who had rented a room with a boo. I heard them shout and fright and fall out of their beds because they heard me screaming.
Uh-huh.
So then I loosened up and I was able to move. I turned on the lights. There was no one in the room. And I know now that what I experienced is called a hypnagogic hallucination.
Uh-huh.
So I was primed to think there would be a ghost there. And then when I woke up, my body was still paralyzed with sleep.
Yeah.
And my mind was still half in a dream state, which is how I could imagine a girl at the foot of the bed. Having seen, if it was a ghost, that would have been better, but I'm afraid the psychological explanation is more convincing. So my one brush with a ghost was actually more like a brush with a frightening dream.
Uh-huh. Well, sleep paralysis is almost scarier than ghosts.
Yes.
It's been 40 years since the release of Creepshow, and I'm just wondering if you have any specific memories from that set as an actor.
Absolutely. I have a whole bunch of memories from that set, and I've written about them a little bit in the introduction to Full Throttle. The story that I've told is that, they made the film. So I played the little boy in the framing device in Creepshow, the little boy named Billy. His father takes away his comic books, and Billy gets revenge by stabbing a voodoo doll, which causes his father agonizing pain. So, and I played Billy in the film. I was the kid with the voodoo doll. So that movie was made, I want to say, in 1981, 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, the child labor laws were very different. And so there was no on-set educator. There was no on-set nanny or babysitter. They didn't know what to do with me when I wasn't filming. So they stuck me in Tom Savini's trailer. And I spent the week hanging out with him.
Cool.
And Tom Savini was my first rock star. I spent a week watching him, disfigure movie stars and sculpt unforgettable monsters. And I just thought he was the coolest. And by the time I left the set of Creepshow, that's what I wanted to do too. I wanted to kill people in memorable ways, and I wanted to dream up great monsters. And that is, in fact, what I wound up doing. I just wound up doing it on the page instead of, with latex appliances and Karo syrup for blood. But also the other thing is sometimes life comes full circle, like a Dickens novel. So you have Tom Savini working on the Black Phone,
Mm-hmm.
to craft that memorable mask. And also Tom directed an episode of the Creepshow TV series based on a story of mine by the Silver Waters of Lake Champlain. And that came out really well. So it's been great. One of my adult pleasures has been renewing my childhood friendship with Tom Savini.
One of my last questions for you is, was there ever a movie that specifically traumatized you when you were growing up? It doesn't even have to be horror.
I was pretty frightened of, I watched Salem's Lot because it was my dad's TV show. And there was that fucking kid floating outside the window, scratching on the window. You saying, "Billy, let me in, Billy." Oh my God. I had nightmares about that kid forever. For months. I couldn't look at the window in my bedroom without imagining him out there. But I was an easily frightened kid. I mean, I remember, and kids, the stuff that frightens kids can't be predicted, in advance, because you don't have to take them to a horror movie to freak them out. I saw Sleeping Beauty when I was very young, and the prince hacks his way through this thicket of thorns and then meets the witch midway through the thicket. And she screams at him, "Now you face all the powers of hell." And as she does, her body ruptures and melts, and she turns into this giant dragon.
Wow.
And I just about pissed myself, and that was an absolute, just start screaming nightmare right in front of me. And so, so it doesn't have to be, when you're little, a Disney film will freak you out.
Yeah, the right commercial. Thank you so much for speaking with me today. This was really great. And congrats again on your film.
Thanks so much, Josh. I had a blast.
Yeah,
good talking to you.